On the night of my 65th birthday, the banquet hall shimmered with golden light, glasses clinked in celebration, and the air buzzed with cheerful conversation. It was supposed to be a warm, joyous occasion. But then my husband Rick suddenly rose to his feet, raised his glass, and his voice boomed across the hall. "I've had enough. If it weren't for family and our daughter, I would have left this marriage a long time ago." The room fell into a stunned silence. All eyes turned to us. Friends and relatives exchanged bewildered glances, whispers rippling through the crowd, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. I remained still, watching Rick, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. A slight tremor ran through my hand. This night was meant to be filled with laughter, but instead, it had become the most humiliating moment of my life. Rick lifted his chin, his voice growing more impassioned. "Maggie, you are the dullest person I've ever known. Being with you has been nothing short of torture. We've always felt more like business partners than husband and wife. I endured it for over 40 years, but I can't do it anymore." Beside me, my daughter Olivia stood frozen, her face drained of color. In her trembling hand, she held onto her 5-year-old son Ethan, who stared up at his grandfather with wide, confused eyes, unable to understand why he was suddenly so angry. "Dad, what are you saying?" Olivia's voice shook with disbelief. But Rick didn't even spare her a glance. His gaze drifted past the sea of guests, locking onto a woman standing in the far corner of the banquet hall. Linda Collins. Draped in a deep blue gown, she stood with quiet elegance, a barely there smile tugging at the corners of her lips. My stomach lurched. Linda, his old flame. Suddenly everything made sense. 3 months ago, Linda's husband had passed away from cancer. And now, with no obstacles left in his way, Rick could finally pursue the love of his life, openly, shamelessly. So this was the real Rick. On the day of Linda's husband's funeral, Rick had left the house practically beaming. He had even gone out of his way to buy an expensive new suit for the occasion. I had even teased him at the time. "Her husband just passed away, Rick. Shouldn't you at least try to look a little somber? Aren't you worried Linda might find it inappropriate? Or that her children might resent you showing up like this?" Standing before the mirror, Rick clumsily adjusted his bow tie, his reflection betraying a smug glint in his eyes. There was even a faint smile tugging at his lips. "What do you know?" he scoffed. "Linda will be thrilled to see me. She knows how much it means that I came." His smile widened as if he could already picture the way Linda's eyes would light up at the sight of him. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his sheer vanity. Walking over, I straightened his suit and muttered, "Rick, that's enough. You're going to a funeral, not an awards ceremony. Don't overdo it. Now go. Stop dawdling." But he wasn't listening. Instead, he grabbed a can of hairspray, gave his hair a few extra passes, and smoothed it down with satisfaction. Only then did he nod approvingly at his reflection and stride out the door. The funeral was solemn, a sea of black suits and stark white lilies steeped in grief. The weight of loss was etched into every face, except for Rick. He stood there like an out-of-place peacock, the corners of his mouth betraying a barely suppressed smile. He wasn't there to mourn the dead. He was there for a grand reunion. I whispered for him to at least try to tone it down, but he ignored me, his gaze darting around until it landed on Linda. The moment the service ended, he wasted no time. With a spring in his step, he made a beeline for her. From a distance, I saw it clearly, the flicker of disgust in Linda's eyes when she first spotted him. But the moment she noticed me watching, that expression vanished, replaced by something else. Satisfaction. She schooled her features effortlessly, tears welling up as if on command. Her shoulders trembled ever so slightly, the picture of a grief-stricken widow on the verge of collapse. And then she fell into Rick's arms as if he were her only source of comfort. At that moment she turned her gaze toward me, and for the briefest second, a triumphant glint flashed in her eyes. I stood frozen, my fingers curling into fists, nails digging deep into my palms. Rick held her close, his hands gently rubbing her back as he murmured soothing words meant only for her. He never once looked back at me. Instead, he simply waved a dismissive hand in my direction, like one would shoo away a bothersome fly, wordlessly telling me to leave. And in that moment I understood. This had been his plan all along. While I had been moving through life on the inertia of our marriage, he had been laying the groundwork for his escape. I had been blind to it all, Until now, until tonight when he finally shed his mask. Now the only thing standing in the way of his so-called happiness was me, his legal wife. That's why he humiliated me in front of everyone. He wanted to push me to my breaking point to force my hand. But why? Why no? Why not years ago when we were younger? Why wait over 40 years, only to turn our marriage into a cruel joke at the end of it? My throat felt dry, my eyes burned as I looked at him and whispered, "Rick, do you really have to divorce me tonight?" He didn't hesitate. If anything, there was a hint of impatience in his voice. "Yes. Tonight. Let's go to the lawyer's office and get it over with." There was no reluctance. No second-guessing. Only urgency, only excitement. He couldn't wait to rid himself of me, to step into his new life. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" Olivia finally broke, her voice trembling. "You and Mom are already at this stage of life. What's the point of a divorce now?" She tried to steady herself, grasping for reason. "And even if you divorce Mom, are you so sure Linda will want to be with you? Have you even asked her?" Her words landed like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples through the silence. For the first time Rick hesitated. His gaze flickered and then slowly he turned back to Linda. He took a deep breath and walked toward her, taking her hand in his before the entire room. "Linda," he said, his voice steady, "will you spend the rest of your life with me?" Linda looked down at Rick's hand wrapped around hers, her brow furrowing instinctively. She didn't look at him right away. Instead, her gaze flickered toward me, and in her eyes, I caught a flash of jealousy. But then, her eyes dropped to my necklace, to the diamond-studded bracelet on my wrist. In that instant, her expression shifted, a brief glimmer of calculation lighting up her face. Only then did she finally turn her attention to Rick. He was watching her with unwavering devotion, his eyes filled with a long-lost anticipation. She let out a delicate cough, feigning frailty. "Rick, my health has never been great. I don't think I'll be around much longer. I may not have much time left to spend with you." Rick's concern was immediate. As soon as she coughed, he reached out to pat her back, trying to soothe her discomfort. But just as effortlessly as she had started, Linda stopped coughing, leaving his hand hovering awkwardly in midair. "Linda, you don't have to worry," he declared, full of conviction. "I have money. I'll make sure you get the best medical care available." She stole another glance at me, then, as if on cue, molded her features into an expression of gratitude and longing. With a soft sigh, she melted into his arms. "I'm willing," she murmured. The words should have sounded tender, romantic even. But on her face, marked by the passage of time, the display felt anything but. And yet Rick was utterly enamored. "Linda." His entire face lit up, his voice brimming with affection as he whispered her name. Before the eyes of family and friends, the two of them embraced, lost in their own world as if nothing else mattered. But I saw it. For the briefest moment, an unmistakable flicker of disgust flashed through Linda's eyes. Standing off to the side, Olivia's expression darkened, her fists clenched at her sides. With a sharp scoff, she strode forward, planting herself between them and forcibly prying them apart. Her voice was ice-cold. "Dad, I don't approve of this woman." Rick was momentarily taken aback. But it didn't last. His face hardened with resolve, his posture straightening as if he were ready to stand against the entire world for Linda. "I don't need your approval." Olivia's jaw tightened, her teeth grinding together in fury. "And Mom will never agree to a divorce." Rick didn't flinch. He simply turned to Linda, looking at her as if she were the only person that mattered, his voice dipping into something low and intimate. "Linda, if that's the case, would you run away with me?" Linda hesitated, her lips parting uncertainly. "I fear my health." Rick pulled her close, his voice brimming with reassurance. "Don't worry, Linda. Even if we elope, I have more than enough money to take care of you." Her eyes flickered. Then, slowly, her gaze drifted downward, to the hand he had possessively draped over her shoulder. A shadow crossed her expression. "Rick," her voice was quiet, almost pensive. "Are you really that wealthy?" Rick, oblivious to the shift in her tone, puffed up with self-importance. "Between my savings and my pension, I must have, what, maybe $800,000? More than enough for us to live comfortably." Linda's eyes gleamed. Rick, too caught up in his own grandeur, didn't notice the calculating look in them. Sensing her hesitation, he pressed further, his voice growing more urgent. "Linda, will you come with me?" She hesitated just for a second before her eyes met mine again. This time her gaze burned with open triumph. And then in the very next breath she turned back to Rick, her expression softening, her voice taking on a delicate, teasing lilt. "Rick, for you I'm willing to give up everything to go with you." He let the words hang between them like a vow. And just like that the two of them fell into their farcical display of passion, reveling in their own theatrical romance. But to me it was nothing short of absurd. A cruel twisted joke. The man I had loved for decades had carried another woman in his heart all along. Everything I had given, all my devotion, my sacrifices, had amounted to nothing. I had spent years caring for his parents as if they were my own, raising our children, tending to every detail of his life with unwavering dedication. When he was thirsty, I handed him a glass of water before he even had to ask. When he mentioned a dish he wanted to try, I immediately went to the kitchen, preparing it with care so he could have it that very night. When he fell ill, I stayed by his side, nursing him back to health without a single complaint. And yet none of it mattered. Not when compared to the woman who had once abandoned him for money. I had believed that if I loved him wholeheartedly, if I gave everything I had, one day I would melt the ice around his heart. But now I finally saw the truth. Rick's heart was nothing more than a stone, if he even had one at all. With Linda he saw nothing but perfection. But with me all he could see were flaws. It turns out when someone doesn't love you they can become blind to your existence. No matter how much you suffer, how deeply you hurt, they will never so much as flinch. Because in their world only their own feelings matter. And the truth was, I was exhausted. Hadn't I been for a long time? Maybe this marriage had been doomed to fail from the start. But to humiliate me like this, to discard me in front of all our family and friends, wasn't that taking it too far? I was 65 years old, still strong, still capable of standing on my own 2 feet. And right then I decided to do something I should have done a long time ago. I marched up to Rick, raised my hand and slapped him. Hard. The crisp sound echoed through the hall, cutting through the heavy silence. Rick's eyes went wide with shock. He had never seen me fight back, not once in over 40 years. I had always been the obedient wife, following his every word without question. Now he stood there stunned, his hand trembling as he pointed at me, struggling to form words. "Maggie." But before he could finish, Olivia was by my side, steadying me with a firm but gentle grip, guiding me back to my seat. I turned my gaze toward the shameless pair still clinging to each other and spoke, my voice cold and steady. "Rick, if you want to be with her, I won't stand in your way. But you'll leave with nothing. You walk out of this marriage the way you walked in, empty-handed. Now get the hell out." At my words, both of their faces darkened. Olivia, panicked, reached for Rick's hand and gripped it tightly. "Dad, if you really go through with this, if you leave Mom for her, I'll be deeply disappointed in you." Rick yanked his hand away with a cold scoff. "Are you trying to threaten me? Ridiculous. Be disappointed all you want. It's not like you were ever on my side anyway. I don't care what you think of me." So that was it. For Linda, he was willing to turn his back on his own daughter. But while Rick was fully committed to his fantasy of spending the rest of his life with Linda, she was clearly not as devoted. The moment she heard me say that he'd have to walk away from this marriage with nothing, her face went ashen. She had dangled herself in front of Rick for years, never fully committing, keeping him on the hook. Her husband had only recently passed and now, all of a sudden, she was willing to be with Rick? If not for his money, then for what? She had been waiting for his inheritance. And if he left this marriage penniless, what was left for her? In an instant, Linda switched tactics, slipping effortlessly into her most well-rehearsed role, the pitiful, self-sacrificing woman. Tears welled in her eyes as she played the part of someone caught in an impossible dilemma. "Rick, if your daughter doesn't approve of us, then maybe we shouldn't force it." Right on cue, a single tear slipped down her cheek just as she said, "Shouldn't force it." It was a performance worthy of an award. On another face it might have even been convincing. But on Linda, a woman as calculating as she was, it was almost grotesque. And yet Rick fell for it completely. He clasped her hands tightly, his voice filled with devotion. "Linda, my love, don't worry. Nothing will keep us apart." Linda hesitated. "But..." Rick silenced her with a reassuring look. "Let me handle everything." Then he turned to me, his expression twisting into outrage. Maggie, who do you think you are to demand I leave with nothing? I let out a cold laugh. Every piece of clothing on your back, I bought it. The house. The bills, the groceries, the daily expenses. All covered by me. You hoarded every penny you ever earned, never once contributing a dime to this household. So tell me, Rick, exactly what have you ever done for this family? He stammered, searching for words. Finally, after struggling for a long moment, he blurted, "You chose to do all that. That was your decision." So that was how he justified it. As if my choice to care for our home, to dedicate myself to our family, somehow negated the years of effort I had poured into this marriage. I stared at him, unblinking, letting the weight of his own words settle over him. Rick seemed to realize just then how ugly his statement had been. He coughed awkwardly, trying to smooth things over. "Maggie, let's compromise. I won't ask for anything you paid for. But the things I bought, my personal belongings, my pension, my savings, I'd like to take those with me. Is that fair?" The room went silent, all eyes turning to me, waiting for my response. Then the murmurs began. "Maggie, this man stayed with you for 40 years only to do this to you in the end? Kick him out and enjoy the rest of your life. Yeah. Why keep a man like that around? You deserve to be happy. Don't let him drag you down." Even Olivia, though hesitant, clenched her jaw and whispered, "Mom, you..." I knew what she wanted to say. I met her gaze, then turned to Rick, whose face had gone tense with unease. A slow, knowing smile curled on my lips. "Oh. And what exactly did you buy with that salary of yours? You barely had enough to spend on yourself. And that so-called savings? Do you really think I don't know where that money came from?" I leaned back, my voice smooth and steady. "Here's my offer, Rick. You give me back every single cent you ever took from me and I'll give you your freedom. Agree to that and I'll sign the divorce papers today." I tilted my head. "Well, what's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" Rick visibly trembled, his entire body shaking with barely contained rage. You... Rick turned to Olivia, desperation flashing in his eyes. He was hoping, praying, that she would defend him, that she would take his side in this moment of crisis. But Olivia simply looked away, refusing to meet his gaze. His breath hitched and then his anger exploded. "Olivia, I'm your father. How can you be so heartless? You ungrateful child." The room, already simmering with discontent, finally boiled over. Our friends and family, long disgusted by Rick's actions, let loose their fury. "Rick, you're a pathetic excuse for a man. Living off your wife for decades, and now you have the audacity to abandon her. Shameless. You throw away a lifetime of marriage like it's nothing and you expect us to stand by and watch? Disgusting." Rick's face contorted in rage. His teeth clenched so tightly his jaw visibly twitched, his fists curling at his sides. "Fine," he spat through gritted teeth. "I'll give everything back. But my pension, surely that belongs to me?" I tilted my head slightly, just in time to catch the way Linda's expression froze. A slow smile tugged at my lips. "Of course, Rick. How could your pension not belong to you? His measly $3,000 a month pension." I would love to see how Linda reacted when she realized that was all he had to offer. Without another word, I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer, instructing him to draft the divorce papers immediately. When I hung up, I turned on my heel and strode toward the exit. Rick, misreading my actions, let out a triumphant chuckle. "Stop right there. Where do you think you're going? Changing your mind?" He sneered, his voice thick with condescension. "Well, too late. I will divorce you no matter what." I sighed, exasperated, and turned back. "Rick, you really are full of yourself. If we're getting divorced, let's do it now. You're coming with me to the lawyer's office right this second to sign the papers." His smirk vanished. His face paled. It was only then, when faced with my complete and unwavering resolve, that he realized. There was nothing left between us. Not love. Not nostalgia. Not even hatred strong enough to tie us together. And that rattled him. I didn't bother analyzing his reaction. I only had one goal now, to get this divorce finalized before he had the chance to change his mind. As I turned once more and walked away, Olivia's voice wavered behind me. Mom. I stopped. Looking back, I met her eyes, those tear-filled, trembling eyes, desperately holding back emotions she didn't know how to express. Her lips parted, quivering slightly, like she had 1,000 things to say but no idea where to start. I knew. Rick had always been the softer parent, the one who spoiled her while I had been strict, always the one to push her harder, expect more. So of course in her heart the scales had always tipped in his favor. Even just moments ago she had been searching for reasons to convince me to stay, clinging to the father she had always idolized. But now as she watched me walk away, something in her eyes shifted. Uncertainty. Realization. Doubt. For the first time she was seeing her father not as the man she had placed on a pedestal, but as the flawed, selfish person he truly was. And in that same moment she looked at me and saw the weight I had carried, the sacrifices I had made. For the first time she didn't just see the mother who had been firm and unyielding, she saw the woman behind it all. And in her heart something new took root. Understanding. And most importantly, a quiet, growing love that had been there all along, waiting to be acknowledged. I gently patted Olivia's hand. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm fine. Stay here and take care of the guest. Your father and I will handle the paperwork and submit the divorce agreement. Once everything is settled, we'll have a good talk, okay?" Her eyes brimmed with emotions too complicated to name. Pain for her mother's suffering. Disillusionment for the father she once idolized. Guilt for the years she had unknowingly deepened my loneliness and exhaustion. "Mom, I was wrong." Her voice wavered, thick with unshed tears, each word pulled straight from the depths of her heart. Her body trembled, and before she could stop herself she threw her arms around me, clinging to me as if only by holding on tightly could she begin to make peace with everything she was feeling. I rubbed her back soothingly, then glanced at her husband, silently instructing him to take care of her. With that I turned and walked away without hesitation. Rick, not wanting to be left behind, immediately grabbed Linda and hurried after me. By the time we reached the entrance my driver was already waiting. The moment I settled into the car, Rick and Linda appeared at the door, acting as though this were their private chauffeur service. Linda's eyes were glued to the car's luxurious interior, staring as if she had never seen anything so extravagant before. Rick, on the other hand, was shameless as ever. Without a second thought he yanked the door open and plopped himself down inside. I shot him a sidelong glance but said nothing. He must have sensed my displeasure, but instead of backing down he had the audacity to grin and say, "Come on, Maggie. Don't be so stingy. What's the harm in giving us a ride?" I sighed inwardly. This man had been spoiled by me for so long that he no longer knew his place. If I refused to let them ride with me, they'd probably end up wandering in circles, getting lost on the way to the lawyer's office. Fine. If giving them a ride meant I could finalize this divorce faster, then so be it. At the lawyer's office we were handed the divorce papers. Before I could even reach for mine, Rick snatched his copy and scribbled his signature without hesitation. Then, with an arm draped around Linda's shoulders, he shot me a smug, almost triumphant look. "Come on, Maggie. Sign it already." I caught the barely concealed distaste in Linda's expression, and a knowing smile touched my lips. I didn't say a word, just calmly took the papers and signed my name. The lawyer gathered the documents, preparing to submit them to the court. The moment everything was finalized, I turned on my heel and left. I didn't bother acknowledging the sound of Rick and Linda celebrating behind me. But the moment I stepped into my house, Rick and Linda barged in right after me. I immediately signaled for the house staff to block their way. My voice was sharp and firm. "Rick, you and I have no connection anymore. What exactly do you think you're doing here?" Rick frowned, clearly irritated. "I just came to get my things." I let out a dry laugh, my voice dripping with mockery. "And what in this house belongs to you?" I gestured to the clothes he was wearing. "Every single thing on your back I paid for." Rick's face turned red with fury. "Maggie, don't push it." I arched a brow, unmoved. "Take them off. All of them. Even your underwear, I bought that too. Leave nothing behind." Linda's eyes widened in shock. She pointed at me, her voice rising in disbelief. "You're insane. You want him to walk out of here naked?" I smirked. "That's his problem, not mine." Rick, too prideful to back down, straightened his spine and shot back. "Fine. I do have clothes I bought myself. Just you wait, I'll return everything else to you." A few minutes later he stomped downstairs. He had changed into a decades-old button-up shirt, its fabric faded and slightly loose on his frame. In his hand he clutched a plastic grocery bag. Inside, I could see a few pitiful belongings, a battered old cell phone and a single debit card. He stood before me, jaw clenched, shaking the bag in my direction. "These are mine." Then, without another word, he grabbed Linda's hand and stormed out. And just like that, Rick Spencer, who had spent 40 years taking from me, left with nothing but a worn-out shirt and a plastic bag. When Olivia returned home with her husband and son, her eyes were swollen and red, clear evidence that she had been crying for quite some time. The moment she saw me, she couldn't hold back. Just like when she was little, she threw herself into my arms, her voice breaking as she sobbed. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I must have hurt you so much over the years. I was so blind, always siding with Dad. I never saw the truth until today. I've been such a terrible daughter." I held her close, gently rubbing her back. My eyes lingered on a distant point in the room as I let out a soft sigh. My voice trembled slightly as I said, "It's all in the past, sweetheart. I've let it go." Her eyes shimmered with both sorrow and deep concern. Her brow furrowed, her lips trembled. She was trying so hard to keep her emotions in check. Cautiously she asked, "Mom, after the divorce, are you really okay?" I stroked her hair and smiled faintly. "Olivia, I'm just fine. You don't have to worry." That night we talked for hours. For the first time in years, there was no distance between us. The unspoken walls that had once stood between us had crumbled. We had never been closer. A month later, I arrived at the courthouse for our final hearing. Deep down, I feared that Rick would back out at the last minute, refusing to appear. If he did, the legal process would become a tedious, drawn-out mess. But to my relief, he showed up. The hearing went smoothly, and by the end of it, we were officially divorced. No longer husband and wife. Not even an hour later, Rick and Linda submitted their application for a marriage license. I couldn't help but wonder how he had convinced her to agree to marry him. Not only that, but they had even planned a grand wedding, and, to my surprise, I was invited. Of course I didn't go. Instead, Olivia attended on my behalf. Not long after she arrived, she sent me a video. The scene in the video? Linda standing in the middle of a dingy little restaurant, wrapped in a cheap, scratchy white gown, screaming at Rick in utter rage. "Rick, this is what you call a grand wedding? I don't see a single thing I wanted. A run-down little restaurant, a handful of random friends stuffing their faces with cheap food, and you dare call this my wedding? And this thing," she grabbed the hem of her dress, shaking it furiously. "You told me it was custom-made, that it cost tens of thousands of dollars. Then why does it feel like sandpaper? It's making my skin break out in a rash." Rick stood there, completely deflated. His head drooped lower and lower, his chin nearly touching his chest. The suit he wore hung off him awkwardly, ill-fitting and wrinkled. Loose threads dangled at the seams. The bow tie at his neck wobbled precariously, threatening to fall off at any moment. Hunched over, he remained silent as Linda unleashed her fury. Only after her shouting died down did he dare to lift his head. With an awkward chuckle, he tried to pacify her. "Linda, please, don't be mad. I promise I'll make you happy. As soon as the wedding is over, we'll move back to my hometown and start a new life together. There's everything we need back home, we won't lack for anything. Just bear with me for now. Once we're there, I'll throw you the real wedding you deserve. I'll invite everyone in town. I'll make sure you have all the attention and respect you deserve." The video ended with Linda letting out a sharp, bitter laugh, before turning her back on him. The last thing Olivia captured was Rick, scrambling after her, bending over to lift the train of her gown as she stormed off. Then Olivia sent me a message filled with confusion. "Mom, if I remember correctly, Grandpa and Grandma moved in with us because the house back in Dad's hometown collapsed years ago. Did you secretly pay to have it rebuilt?" I didn't even need to think twice. I had been married to Rick for 42 years. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was stalling. Lying to Linda, feeding her empty promises, hoping to keep her hooked for as long as possible. I chuckled softly, typing back a short and simple reply. "He's lying. That house hasn't existed for years." When Olivia returned, she could barely contain her amusement as she recounted the utter disaster that was Rick and Linda's wedding. Apparently, Rick had thrown himself into the world of social media, chasing after the trends of the younger generation. Ever since the day he signed our divorce papers, he had been dragging Linda around, traveling and filming videos, desperately trying to become a full-time content creator. He carefully curated their online image, portraying them as a devoted, inseparable couple. An old-school romantic who adored his wife and loved taking her on extravagant trips. Surprisingly, the act worked. For a while, their videos gained traction among young dreamers who longed for a love story like theirs. With a bit of online fame, Rick managed to keep Linda in the dark about his real financial situation, at least for a while. But their reckless spending soon caught up with them. Between their lavish lifestyle and Rick's growing obsession with online stardom, whatever savings he had, along with his meager income from content creation, vanished in a blink. Desperate to boost his visibility, Rick decided to livestream their wedding. In front of the camera, he played the role of the devoted groom flawlessly, clasping Linda's hands with exaggerated tenderness, making every glance, every smile, seem like a poetic declaration of love. At first, the livestream chat overflowed with admiration. "Grandpa is so sweet. He planned this whole wedding just to make Grandma's dream come true. This is so romantic. What a beautiful love story. They're proof that love has no age limit. Wishing them a lifetime of happiness." But behind the illusion of a perfect wedding, reality was creeping in. Many of our mutual friends were present, standing awkwardly in the background, their faces betraying emotions that ranged from discomfort to outright disgust. They exchanged knowing glances, gripping their champagne glasses a little too tightly. Then someone finally had enough. A voice cut through the sea of adoration in the livestream chat. "You people are idolizing a man who cheated on his wife and left her for his mistress. And you call that love? What a joke." At first, the viewers refused to believe it. But then someone stormed up to Rick's live streaming phone and held up their own screen, playing the video. The video of Rick, arm around Linda, arrogantly forcing me to agree to the divorce. The contrast between his domineering, heartless behavior back then and the gentle, doting husband act he was putting on now was staggering. Rick immediately realized the danger. He lunged forward, trying to block the screen. But the person smirked. "Too late. I already uploaded it to my account. If anyone doubts me, just search my username and watch it for yourselves." Within 10 minutes, the tide turned. Rick's chat was flooded with furious comments. "I thought he was a romantic, but he's just a scumbag. Disgusting." He said he regretted never taking her on trips before, but what about his first wife? Did he ever think about what she deserved? If he really loved this woman, why would he let her wear that cheap, tacky dress? The backlash became too much. Rick scrambled to shut down the livestream. But the damage was already done. Linda's gaze remained frozen on the screen, her face paling as she read through the brutal comments. Then her eyes landed on one particular insult. "That dress looks cheap as hell. How could anyone believe it cost thousands?" Something in her snapped. Her head slowly turned to Rick, her voice low, trembling with rage. "Tell me, Rick." She enunciated each word carefully, as if holding back a full-blown explosion. "This wedding dress, the one you claimed cost tens of thousands, is it actually expensive or did you just lie to me?" Rick opened his mouth, grasping for another lie. But before he could answer, one of our mutual friends, someone who had tolerated enough of his nonsense, beat him to it. "Oh, come on, Linda. Don't be stupid. We all can see that dress is cheap garbage." That was the final straw. Linda lost it. With a furious shriek, she grabbed whatever was within reach, glassware, flower arrangements, even wedding gifts, and hurled them to the floor, smashing everything in sight. And when there was nothing left to break, he turned on Rick. Linda, blinded by rage, started throwing punches, slapping and kicking him with all the force her body could muster. Rick stumbled backward, trying to shield himself, yelping in pain as Linda rained blows down on him. By the time the chaos finally ended, Rick wasn't standing anymore. He was on the ground, groaning in pain. Moments later, the wedding officially concluded, with him being rushed to the hospital. All that remained was a wrecked venue, a furious bride, and a crowd of stunned guests, left speechless by the sheer disaster they had just witnessed. After hearing Olivia's account of everything that had happened, I could only sigh. Rick's downfall was inevitable. Linda had never cared for him, only for his money. 3 days later, Olivia approached me hesitantly. "Mom, can I go visit Dad in the hospital?" Of course, I had no reason to refuse. No matter what had happened between Rick and me, the love he had once shown Olivia as a child was real. If she completely cut him off just because of our divorce, then perhaps I would need to reflect on whether I had raised her correctly. When Olivia returned, her expression was complicated. "Mom, Dad's not doing well. Linda ran off with his retirement money." I simply let out a quiet sigh. "If that's the case, then the responsibility of caring for him falls on you." Olivia looked torn, her brows drawn in deep conflict. I reached out, patting her hand gently. "Don't worry, Linda won't get far. Don't forget they're married now." A light flickered in Olivia's eyes as realization struck. She wasted no time taking action. Tracking down Linda's children, she demanded that they share the responsibility of caring for Rick. Naturally, they were reluctant. None of them wanted to suddenly become responsible for an aging man they had no blood ties to. But Olivia didn't care about their reluctance. Faced with no other option, Linda's children finally caved, revealing her hiding place. Without hesitation, Olivia had Rick sent straight to Linda's doorstep, demanding that she take responsibility for her husband. After all, she had taken his retirement money. Wasn't it only fair that she earned it? At first, Linda begrudgingly played along, tolerating Rick's presence for the sake of the $3,000 pension she received each month. But caring for an ailing man, one who could no longer take care of himself, quickly became unbearable for her. Every moment spent looking after him was a source of frustration. Every inconvenience an insult to her carefully curated lifestyle. And when Linda got angry, she made sure Rick was the one to suffer for it. The kindness she once feigned for him was gone. Instead, she lashed out, both with her words and her fists. Rick, weak and helpless, could do nothing but endure it. Tears of regret streamed down his face as he looked at the woman he had once adored. The woman who had once smiled so sweetly at him, now filled with nothing but resentment. Regret consumed him. He called me repeatedly, leaving message after message, begging for my help. I never answered. This was his reckoning. His own choices had led him here. By the time Olivia visited him again, Rick's health had deteriorated even further. Once again he was rushed to the hospital. After weeks of treatment, Olivia made a decision. One she knew was best for everyone. She placed him in a nursing home, ensuring that he would be cared for while sparing me the burden of dealing with him. He promised to visit him every month. Through Olivia, Rick sent me a message. One final plea for redemption. He told her he deeply regretted the divorce. He begged me to visit him. I only smiled when I heard it. The man who had drained decades of my life, the man who had humiliated me, betrayed me, no longer had a place in my heart. I had no desire to see him again. But I would not stop Olivia from helping him. That, in itself, was the last bit of mercy I was willing to offer him. From now on, I planned to follow the advice of my friends. I would embrace my single life. I would cherish my freedom. So I gathered a few of my closest friends, packed my bags and set off. The world was waiting. And I had a lifetime of happiness ahead of me.
I am Olivia. I still remembered that on my 6th birthday, my father lifted me onto his shoulders and laughed. What does my little princess want to do today? The amusement park was bustling with people. From my vantage point above the crowd, I could see everything: the vibrant balloons, the sugary scent of cotton candy, the gentle melody of the carousel spinning in the distance. In my childhood world, these were the symbols of happiness. And my mother, she stood off to the side, phone pressed to her ear, brows furrowed, nodding absent-mindedly while rummaging through her bag for something. My father was the bringer of joy in my childhood. He would sneak cartoon stickers into my backpack after school, take me out for fried chicken on rainy days instead of making me go home and do my homework like my mother insisted. On certain days, he would even write excuse notes so I could skip school tests without consequence. My mother, in contrast, was disciplined and reserved. There was always a faint trace of worry in her eyes. She checked my homework with meticulous care, made sure I ate my carrots, and filled my days with endless reminders. Her love felt heavy, so heavy that it suffocated me. She built a fortress around me, ensuring that not a single drop of harm could seep through. But instead of feeling safe, I resisted her. As a child, I could never understand why my mother was so strict while my father's love felt so easy, so effortless. It wasn't until years later that I finally realized imperfect love feels light, while perfect devotion can be crushing. The day Linda's husband died, my father bought himself a brand new suit and doused himself in cologne. The rich scent of wood and spice filled the car, making me wrinkle my nose. "Dad, why so much cologne?" He adjusted his tie with a self-assured smirk. "It's a formal occasion. You have to show respect." But when we arrived at the funeral, I noticed that his bright tie stood out more than the deceased's portrait. He scanned the mourners, searching for something. Then, I saw it, the moment he spotted Linda. His lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. And then, he walked toward her. In the flickering candlelight, I watched as he reached out and lightly clasped Linda's fingers in his own. From across the room, I saw through the haze of burning incense. Our eyes met. He hesitated for just a fraction of a second before abruptly releasing her hand, feigning nonchalance as he adjusted his cufflinks. At that moment, something inside me cracked. On the way home, I finally asked, "Dad, what about Mom?" His expression darkened, irritation creeping into his voice, a tone I had never heard from him before. "That's none of your business. I'll handle things with your mother." I froze. For years, he had always been patient with me. Always gentle. Always warm. But now, when confronted with the truth, his first reaction wasn't guilt, it was anger. And in that moment, I understood. When a lie is exposed, anger often comes faster than shame. On my mother's 65th birthday, my father stood, raising his glass. "Maggie, let's get a divorce." The banquet hall fell into stunned silence. Guests turned to look at him, their expressions frozen in disbelief. My mother's fingers trembled slightly, the deep red of her wine reflecting the pallor of her face. And in the farthest corner of the hall, Linda stood. Her lips curled into the faintest, most imperceptible smile. The absurdity of the scene was staggering, yet to me, it had never been clearer. As my father moved toward Linda, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. For the first time in 20 years, my hand, this hand that had never once reached for my mother first, instinctively grasped her cold, trembling fingers. She flinched, as if she couldn't believe it. At that exact moment, her pearl necklace snapped, sending beads scattering across the floor. Pearls rolled beneath the feet of the guests, yet no one bent down to pick them up. Watching it all unfold, a dull ache settled in my chest. 40 years of marriage, reduced to nothing more than a glance from an old lover. In the end, my mother divorced him. She did not cry. She did not look back. 1 month later, I received a postcard from her, sent from the Sahara Desert. The golden glow of the sunset stretched across an endless expanse of dunes, the light soft and boundless. On the back, in delicate pink ink, she had written, "For the first time, I am living for myself." I held the fragile piece of paper in my hands, my heart swelling with emotions I couldn't name. For so many years, I had stood in my father's shadow. I had ignored my mother's silence. I had mistaken her strength for coldness. She had always endured, always remained composed. She never needed my protection. But now, I finally wanted to do something for her. And for the first time, I understood. When guilt is crushed into dust and rebuilt into the foundation of love, only then am I worthy of saying, "Mom, take your time. Keep walking your unfinished road."